In 1950, Venezuela was richer than France. Let that sink in for a moment. Richer than France. Richer than Japan. Richer than most of Europe. People were leaving Italy, Spain, and Portugal, some of the most beautiful countries on earth, and moving to Venezuela looking for a better life. Today, Venezuela is a country where people eat from rubbish bins, where hospitals have no medicine, where the lights go out for 20 hours a day, where over 7 million people, a quarter of the entire population, have fled on foot just to survive. No war happened. No invasion. No earthquake, no flood. Just decisions. Just leadership. Just choices made by people in power who cared more about staying in power than building a future. This is the fall of Venezuela. And it is the most devastating self-inflicted collapse of any nation in modern history. To understand Venezuela's destruction, you have to understand one word: oil. Venezuela sits on top of more proven oil reserves than any country on earth. More than Saudi Arabia. More than Russia. More than Iraq. When oil prices were high in the mid-20th century, money poured into Venezuela like a flood. The government built schools, hospitals, and roads. Poverty was falling. The middle class was growing. Life for ordinary Venezuelans was genuinely improving. But oil created a trap so dangerous that economists have a name for it: the oil curse. When a country becomes completely dependent on one resource, it stops building everything else. Agriculture weakens. Manufacturing disappears. The private sector shrinks. Education stops producing engineers and scientists and starts producing people who work for the oil company. Everything becomes about oil. And when the oil money flows, nobody notices the danger. Nobody prepares for what happens when it stops. Venezuela walked straight into this trap. And then it locked the door behind itself. Then in 1999, a man named Hugo Chavez took power. And everything changed. Chavez was unlike any leader Venezuela had seen before: loud, charismatic, angry. He spoke directly to the millions of poor Venezuelans who had been left behind by decades of governments that took the oil money and kept it for themselves. He promised a revolution. He called it the Bolivarian Revolution. He was going to take Venezuela's oil wealth and give it back to the people. And in the beginning, he did. Poverty fell dramatically under Chavez. Millions of people accessed healthcare and education for the first time in their lives. Literacy programs reached communities that had been forgotten for generations. Chavez became not just popular, he became a symbol. A hero to the poor, not just in Venezuela, but across all of Latin America. But revolutions are expensive. And Chavez was spending money Venezuela did not actually have. He nationalized industry after industry: oil companies, farms, factories, banks, supermarkets. The experienced professionals who ran these businesses were pushed out. Government loyalists with no expertise were put in charge. People who knew politics but knew nothing about running an oil company or a farm or a factory. Production collapsed. Efficiency disappeared. The nationalized companies became financial black holes kept alive only by the endless flow of oil money. And then Chavez made the decision that sealed Venezuela's fate. He took personal control of PDVSA, the national oil company, one of the most professionally run energy companies in the world, and filled it with political allies. Within years, oil production began falling. The one engine that powered everything was being dismantled from the inside. In 2013, Hugo Chavez died of cancer. His chosen successor was Nicolás Maduro, a former bus driver turned politician who had none of Chavez's charisma, none of his intelligence, and none of his political skill. Maduro inherited a country already in serious trouble. And then in 2014, the thing that should have been planned for decades earlier finally arrived. Global oil prices collapsed. Overnight, the money that funded everything, the food subsidies, the healthcare, the entire machinery of the Venezuelan state, dried up completely. And unlike a properly diversified economy that could absorb the shock, Venezuela had nothing else. No manufacturing. No agriculture. No private sector worth speaking of, just oil. And the oil money was gone. What Maduro did next turned a crisis into a catastrophe. He printed money. And more. Flooding the economy with currency backed by nothing. Inflation reached 1,000,000%. 1 million. A bag of rice that cost a few bolivars on Monday cost thousands by Friday. Workers were paid in stacks of cash so enormous they needed bags to carry them home, and those bags still could not buy a week of groceries. The supermarket shelves went empty. Not occasionally. Permanently. The government introduced food rationing. People could only buy certain items on certain days based on the last digit of their ID number. Families queued for hours outside shops only to find nothing left when they reached the front. Medicine disappeared from hospitals. Doctors performed surgery without anesthetic. Babies died from infections that a basic antibiotic would have cured. Venezuela, a country that had once had a functioning modern healthcare system, collapsed back to conditions not seen since the 19th century. And then the people left. Not in small numbers. In a flood that became one of the largest refugee crises in the history of the Western Hemisphere. Over 7 million Venezuelans have abandoned their country, doctors, engineers, teachers, nurses. The exact people any country needs to rebuild, walking across borders on foot, carrying everything they owned in a single bag. Heading to Colombia, Peru, Chile, Brazil. Anywhere that was not Venezuela. Those who stayed faced a daily reality almost impossible to describe. Power cuts lasting 20 hours. Running water available only a few hours a week. Caracas, once a proud capital city, becoming one of the most dangerous cities on earth. Nicolás Maduro is still in power today. Despite the collapsed economy. Despite 7 million refugees. Despite international sanctions. Despite his own people begging for change, Maduro has held on through control of the military, suppression of opposition, and manipulation of elections. Democracy in Venezuela exists in name only. The tragedy of Venezuela is that none of this was inevitable. Norway found oil at roughly the same time as Venezuela. Norway built a sovereign wealth fund that today is worth over $1 trillion. They saved for the future while the oil lasted. They built a diversified economy alongside it. Today, Norway is one of the wealthiest, most stable countries on Earth. Venezuela chose a different path. Every single time the choice came, spend today or save for tomorrow, Venezuela chose today. And tomorrow came anyway. In 2001, Venezuela's GDP per capita was higher than China's. Think about what China is today. Think about what Venezuela is today. That is not bad luck. That is not geography. That is not destiny. That is what leadership decisions do to a country over time. The oil did not destroy Venezuela. The people who refused to build anything beyond oil destroyed Venezuela. If this story changed how you see the world, subscribe to Fallen Giants. Because next week we uncover another collapse. And trust me, it hits even closer to home.